morning, guys. I'm back again with another video for you about my grandmother's shenanigans in the 70s and 80s. You see, this story, anyway, my name is Mchuketi Mtombeni. You can watch my previous video, you can like this video, you can share it, you can follow me, you can subscribe. I'm back again with another story. This story happened somewhere 1983, if I'm not mistaken, starting from 1983, yes, if I'm not mistaken, or 82, going to the next years. So in Soweto, there's a gentleman called Mr. Mkhwanazi. Now, this gentleman used to work for, as far as I know, used to work for Department, if not Home Affairs, the Bantu side. It was the Department of Labor, the Bantu side. I'm just not sure. His job, if I remember well, it had to do with delivering of letters. So, for some reason, they couldn't use the post. I think it was because whenever he delivers the letter, he needs to make sure that someone signs for it. Now, he was moved from Soweto to Pretoria years prior to what happened in the story I'm going to tell you about. So he was now living in Pretoria. I don't really know. I know it's one of the townships in Pretoria, but I cannot really tell you which one. All right. Now this gentleman came to my grandmother. He was having sores in his legs. It was actually around his ankle, because I remember there was one big sore around just above his ankle. It was watery. It was leaking what this stuff called pus or pus, the one that normally, you know, when you so it was actually, so he had bandages around on one leg. I think it was the right leg. So he could not do his work as a result. I think when he came to my grandmother, it was probably a few months, because he did relate a story to my grandmother that he's been to Baragwanath Hospital, he's been to specialists. Well, this thing will go away slightly, but just when it's supposed to heal, it will eventually come back. So my grandmother said, no, it's fine, I can see if I can help you. So I remember my grandmother took, I think, a bowl, then he put, I think, warm water. I think he started treating this wound with something. Then I remember maggots came out. And then I think he continued healing him. They were busy talking, you know, about, I think it's a person that actually knew my grandfather. I'm just not sure how. But I think it has to do with my grandfather drinking at his home. But I'm really not sure what was their relationship somewhere. But they looked like people that were beyond patient and doctor, you know. Right, and then, so my grandmother worked on this gentleman. He worked on him. I remember the following day, the guy slept over. I remember the following day, the gentleman, my grandmother gave him two packages. It was of muti. So the first one was to, I think, I remember it was to actually, he's supposed to boil this thing, and then he has to just apply it on his sores. And I remember the other one was for him to drink. So, because this guy said to my grandmother, you know what, sometimes I drink, I forget. What you can do for me, you can just separate. The one can be on the plastic bag, and the other one you can just wrap it with the paper. I think my grandmother did that, I just don't remember. The gentleman left. He never paid my grandmother. Because you see, my grandmother, she normally never charged the patients. You will give her whatever you can afford, you know what I mean? Because there were people that were giving us. I remember there was a woman that gave us crockery, a set of crockery. I think she got it from her employer. Then I think I'm not sure if she used it, and then she gave it to my grandmother after my grandmother did some work on that lady. I mean, people used to give us, some they would give us food, some they would give us, you know, she never really had like a payment structure or a price structure as to this is this much and that is this much. So if she happens to help you, you will then be able to pay with whatever. Even though most people paid with money, but it was not only money that she used to accept. Now, yeah, the gentleman never paid us anything. The gentleman left. Mr. Mkwanazi left. I think a few months later, well, I assume that he healed. He got healed then. A few months later, he came. He came back. Now, the sores now have reappeared, but on a different side of his leg. So my grandmother first asked if the previous treatment went well. The gentleman said, yes, it went well. Then, but somehow I could sense that he's actually blaming my grandmother for not completely getting rid of this thing, you know, because that's what I could sense. So, you see, I could feel in my grandmother that she was actually trying to prove in what she was doing to the gentleman that she can really take care of such a thing, you know. She did heal the guy. She did give the guy treatment. She did work on the guy. And then the guy disappeared. Never paid my grandmother again. Okay. But I don't think she took it serious or whatever. But I remember she did every now and then say that now this guy is now alright, but is not coming back to say thank you. Even though, and I remember she once said something to that effect. Which is why I know that the guy never paid my grandmother. Okay. So months went by. I think it was the following year, yes. Now the following year when the gentleman came, he came with his wife. I think there's a guy, other older gentleman, which was, I'm not sure if it was his uncle or his wife's uncle, because they both referred to him as uncle. Now this guy was he drove them to my grandmother's place. So when they came, they started relating a story that, okay, Sharp, he got healed. After he got healed, but when it came back strongly, because it affected both him and the wife. The wife had sores, similar sores, but they were a bit smaller on the wife. But the gentleman, instead of one leg, it was now on 2 legs. On the wife, it was on 1 leg, but smaller sores. But both of them were like similar, you know. So I remember the uncle asked if, because I remember the uncle said to my grandmother, you can keep on healing them, but I think the root cause of this thing, I think it's where they live. If you can get rid of that, probably this thing will get done. Then after my grandmother gave them treatment, I think there was a suggestion that she can go with them to where they live, at least to do some work. And I remember there was a story that they were talking about as to someone wanting them dead, or something to that effect. I just don't remember. They were talking, you know, adults when they're talking, you were listening. So I think there was a time when my grandmother, after they've been talking, my grandma said, no, I think I know what's happening in this situation. I really, really think I know what's happening in this situation. Then she said, yes, I think it's a good suggestion that I go to this place and I just see what's happening there. I remember she packed a few clothes, just a small bag. Then they left. It was late in the evening at that time. She left for a couple of days. I think it might have been like a week or so. And then I'm not sure if she came back home, dressed, took her work clothes and then went to work, or she already took the work clothes, and while she was at this guy's place, then she went to work. I just don't know what happened there. But she came back after a week or a couple of days or so. She came back. I remember she was telling one of her friends that she did work on the place, everything was fine. And then she said, I remember she was saying boastfully. No, she was talking to a relative, I remember. She was saying boastfully that, yeah, whoever did that, I've sent it back to that person. I remember she was saying that, yeah, I know that person, what they did. She gave the name. I don't know what it is. She says that I know that. I grew up doing these things. I know everything. So what I've done, I'm clever than them. So I've worked everything out and I've sent it back to that person who sent it to these people. I I think it must have been about after a year or so, because it went quiet. My grandmother was working with other people. I must have forgotten. We must have forgotten, man, I think. Well, I don't know on that time they paid my grandmother or not. I just don't remember, but I don't really think I'm just not sure. It must have been about a year or so, or maybe more than a year, I just don't remember. But after some time. Now, there was a gentleman that came in. The gentleman, his name is Mahlati. So my grandmother used to refer to him as Mhlati. I don't know why. So this guy Mhlati, he said to us, I think, yeah, it must have been over 2 years or so. Yeah, it must have been over 2 years or so, because I remember I was like 13 years at that time, because I've just started high school. Yes. Now, the gentleman Mhlati, what he told my grandmother, he said that now, whatever you did to Mkhwanazi, it's really working, because when this guy was sick, he was coming here and getting healed, coming here and getting healed. And even the people of the area were like surprised as to how can this guy go to this person in Soweto and he get healed. And he's obviously been bewitched. And I think it must have been months later on, Mr. Mkhwanazi's ex-wife started having the same problem. I think it must have been sent to her. I think she got sick with the same sores. These sores became bigger. They grew bigger on both feet. She ended up coming to Mkhwanazi and asking for forgiveness. She confessed that she's the one who was doing this, and the person who was helping her doing this is no longer able to undo this thing. Then Mkhwanazi was busy laughing at this lady, standing on the streets and shouting around that, yeah, whoever wants to come and do nonsense at my place, yeah, I've got a very powerful person in Soweto who will kill all of you. And this gentleman Mahlati said that the people of the area were like scared of Mr. Mkhwanazi because of what, you know, this story, it flew the whole township that this guy has got a very powerful person in Soweto. Whatever you do, even people were like coming to him, can you please help us with this person? I mean, him being boastful, he was like, no, this is my person, he's looking after me. I've got everything, no one can do anything. And people really believed it, because I think the ex-wife, later on, I ended up passing on, you know. I don't know if it was related to this or it was something else, because I remember that she was supposed to be I don't know if it was both legs were supposed to be cut. I'm just not sure what happened there, but I think she ended up passing on. And really people of the area in Pretoria really believe that, no, Mr. Mkhwanazi has a very powerful person in Soweto. Now, this guy, Mr. Mhlati, he had a problem with his wife. Now, his wife had a I think I'm not sure if it's a tumor, or she was like looking pregnant, but she was actually not pregnant, because it was like when he came to my grandmother with his wife, it was like 2 years like this. She has been like pregnant, you know, because at the beginning they thought she's pregnant, but the doctors would say not pregnant. After 6-7 months, pregnant, not pregnant, until it stayed like that. I mean, they started getting concerned, because according to Mr. Mhlati, he's been to so many healers who were telling him different stories. Because even though he did go to Mr. Mkhwanazi, begging him, promising money to please take us to this person so that we can, my wife can get healed, you know. Mr. Mkhwanazi kept on, you know, not wanting to tell them where, you know, this traditional healer who can help is. But what ended up happening is that now Mr. Mkhwanazi's wife ended up giving Mr. Mhlati's their uncle's address, because the uncle actually knew the place to our home. So that's how he ended up finding us. But he actually did struggle. So I remember my grandmother did work on the lady, because the lady, they stayed in our home, I think it might have been about 4 or 5 days or so. Because I remember I used to go to school, come back, they were there just like that for a few, I think maybe a week or so. Then she worked on her, and then Mr. Mhlati did pay us, I remember, because my grandmother did have a small pouch where she put the coins. The guy paid us in a lot of coins, you know, so I remember he did pay us, but I don't think Mr. Mkhwanazi paid us, but I'm not paid my grandmother, I'm saying us. So yes, and later on, I think it must have been a few months later, Mr. Mkhwanazi did come back. I mean, Mr. Mhlati did come back again to thank my grandmother. You know, he had a cake that I think his wife's sister baked, and so he brought it, and then he brought a few gifts as well. So then he did thank us. He was all happy. You could see he's happy. The wife is happy. They were telling jokes. They would laugh amongst themselves. You could see they were happy. They were genuinely happy. So I remember there was, I think it must have been few weeks after that, he brought someone else as well. This guy had a problem with his hand. I don't know, he said someone at work was bewitching him. He couldn't use the hand. I don't know, was it the right or left hand? I don't remember. But it was a bit stiff. He could not use it. So he said, since he at work, he was competing with this guy for I don't know, for a position or a contract, something like that. But suddenly he could not use his hand. So my grandmother did work on him. This guy, I think he came about 2 or 3 times, because at first after she worked on him, the hand did heal slightly but could not. He came back again. It started, until it was okay, So, so that's the story about Mr. Mhlati. And then I remember my grandmother, even though she had a very big reputation in Pretoria, I don't know which township in Pretoria, but the people never knew who she was. They only knew that Mr. Mkhwanazi, he's got a person in Soweto who's very, very powerful. Because according to Mr. Mhlati, he told us a lot of stories, as to how feared Mr. Mkhwanazi was at that time. People didn't actually want to get there on the side of him. He was even boastful about, people in the shops, telling them that if they don't give him credit, he will make sure that their shop doesn't succeed. No one will buy there. And people used to be genuinely scared of that, because they've already heard stories. They really thought. So that's what I thought. Maybe it's a story I could tell you on that, what happened there. Somewhere in the 80s, somewhere there. I think that's it for now. I will tell you next time about my grandmother's story, about my grandmother's monkey. We used to have a monkey. I will tell you a story next. So if you like the story, please make sure that you subscribe. You like this video, you share it to your friends. You subscribe, you follow me at Mjuketi. See you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.